Hey, welcome to the Woods fans. It's Melissa. In this video, I really challenged myself to build a tray ceiling feature to bring my kitchen ceiling up to its original 9 feet height where I was able to over the island. Other areas had plumbing in the way and LVL beams, and so I could only bring it up to that 9-foot height in one spot, but I think this is going to look amazing because it creates a feature in the center of the room and a more cozy feeling when gathered around the island. This portion of today's video is sponsored by Lowe's. I absolutely love their home improvement brand. I always find what I'm looking for here. They have everything from home decor to lighting, raw lumber, special orders, whatever you need for your home improvement project, check on Lowes.com first. That's what I did when planning out this kitchen remodel. The appliances I needed replacing all came from Lowe's, including the fridge and the dishwasher. I ordered my sink from Lowes.com and my faucet. I got rug, and in this video, I'm going to show you at the end these gorgeous lights hanging down from this feature ceiling I'll be building. I pretty much always shop online at Lowes.com, or I use their mobile app to do like free in-store pickup, but I don't live super close to a Lowe's, so most of the time I'll take advantage of their free shipping and their same-day delivery to have products show up right to my doorstep. You can find competitive prices every day, both online and in store. They have the low price guarantee, but what I prefer Lowe's for are their exclusive brands where I feel like I can really trust the quality. Like the Allen and Roth brand, I'm so obsessed with the modern style of all the products, and I've purchased a lot of things from Allen and Roth for the kitchen. You can only find them on Lowe's. Watch till the end to see how these gorgeous pendants look hanging from my new ceiling design. Let's get into it. First, I'm adding 2x4 supports across the original height plaster ceilings and screwing them into the joist behind. I had to shim these up to be level because the plaster wasn't level at all. I shimmed as thick as like an inch. Next, I'm going to begin cutting and prepping my plywood. I'm starting with just a big old 4x8 sheet of 1/2 inch thick maple plywood, and I'm cutting out holes for exactly where my lights are going to hang down. These I measured precisely so that the pendants are exactly centered in the opening. The sides will also be plywood, but my dimensions of the opening is like 10 feet by about 5.5 feet. So for the 10-foot sides, I couldn't find 10-foot long plywood. I had to actually join a couple pieces together, and I did this by doing a bevel joint so that the cut looked really, really thin and it was minimized this way. I created some pocket holes and I glued the joint, clamped it, and then screwed that together on the back side of the plywood. This is actually really strong when the glue set up, and I'm really happy with how this joint turned out because it was pretty difficult for me. These plywood sides are meant to slant upward toward the 4x8 sheet of plywood. And to create a slant, I have to cut an angle like a bevel on the edge of each piece of plywood. If you want to know more about how I did that, I have a whole video breaking out this little hack. With that super big angle cut, I'm now able to just use my table saw for the rest of what I need. So in order for that plywood to slant correctly, one side has to be cut at 60 degrees, the other side at 30. And my homemade workbench with this like long outfeed, because my table saw is just hooked up on the end of it, is going to work perfect for this. So I set my table saw blade to a 30-degree angle, and I'm just supporting my piece, running it through the table saw. For that 10-foot long piece of plywood, I did build up like a ladder support on the back end so that I had an infeed and outfeed help. I'm gonna do some magic with the finish to really get that seam to look inconspicuous. So starting with that big sheet of plywood for the top of the ceiling, I'm going to create a paint wash. And this is just a little bit of paint in a lot of water. It allows you to control the finish really well versus a stain, and it kind of masks some of the wood grain below. My plywood is not all maple. Some of it had to be birch, and I knew if I stained, it would end up like a little different, right? The maple might be more pink and the birch might be more yellow, and I just wanted it all to really match. So I opted for this paint wash. I also think this is going to help me mask that seam I was talking about. So let's see how it turned out. I only applied one coat, and then after like 10 minutes of it soaking into the wood, I wiped off the excess. I actually think the color turned out so beautiful. A light neutral brown that is going to actually match my island finish really well. So when it was fully dried, I came in and sanded it with a high grit sandpaper to knock down the raised grain, and then I began sealing it with a spray-on matte poly. This didn't end up being my final sealant coat because when the project was actually installed, I came back in to seal it again with something a little shinier. We'll get to that later in the video. To install, I needed the help from my husband to hold the other side. These pieces were quite difficult to hold over our heads. So once we kind of got it into place, I actually came in with a 4x4 cut to length, and I tensioned that between the sheet of plywood we were holding to the ceiling and actually the countertop on my island. So naughty, I know, but it worked and allowed my husband to drop his arms and not die while I came in and screwed the very edges of the plywood into my 2x4 support system. The screws I'm adding right now are pan head screws so that they have extra holding power, and they are so close to the edge that the angled plywood I add for the sides of my tray ceiling will completely cover them up. Now came the moment of truth. We put one of the long sides up to see if my beveled cuts on the edges would align perfectly with my framing and the ceiling 4x8 sheet of plywood. When it was pushed into place, my seams were tight and I was so overjoyed. It allowed me to just nail my finish nails right through the piece of plywood into my framing and into that plywood on the ceiling, since my beveled edges made it all flush. For the shorter sides, I did end up needing to figure out and cut a compound miter, which I've only done a handful of times, like installing crown molding and such, and it was so hard. I didn't even get a successful clip of what I did, to be honest, but you might wonder how I figured out my angles. It was so much trial and error. I would just use scrap pieces of lumber and kind of cut and adjust as I went. Now I'm going to create some custom trim work for the edges to cover up where my beautiful plywood tray ceiling meets the drywall. So I want to make this edge look pretty. It's not exactly even across, and trim is just going to make it look so finished off. I had to cut custom because nothing in the store was going to do this weird angle I created. So I used the furring strips that I actually took off the ceiling. You remember how it was covered in furring strips to hold that tongue and groove pine that was there before? Well, I took all of those little nails out of these furring strips and decided to try to reuse the lumber. I cut 30-degree bevels into it, and then I carefully used my table saw to create this trim that is about 1/8 of an inch thick all the way across. Look at this piece that I created. I am amazed that this worked out and that they weren't too brittle and they didn't break or anything. But because these are furring strips, man, they needed a lot of help to look pretty. I filled so many imperfections in the wood with this lightweight spackling. When they were sanded perfectly smooth, I came in and primed them to seal. Now, before I can install these trim pieces, I have to completely finish the ceiling by caulking all of the corners and edges. This is color matched caulk. I did come back in and paint over it a little bit with some highlights of this acrylic paint I mixed up just to color match and really make those edges blend in and disappear. Then I decided I wanted to reseal the whole ceiling in a satin finish, and I'm so glad I did, because when I rolled on the satin poly and it dried, I was amazed. It looked beautiful. Next, I cut my custom trim work to size and began to install. For this, I am doing a 45-degree mitered edge, which I usually prefer butt joints, but on this angled masterpiece, I knew I had to do a mitered joint. And so that was also a little complicated to get figured out, but I got her done. Now, finally, I get to install the beautiful pendants that I got from Lowe's.com. And installing light fixtures is actually quite straightforward if you've never done it before. Upgrading lighting in your home can make a huge difference, and it's easy to DIY. Lowe's has the best and largest selection of beautiful lighting for the home, but for these pendants in particular, I appreciate the alabaster glass globe. They look so high-end, but are truly affordable at about $100 a piece. The modern style just fits in perfectly with what I created here on this ceiling feature. I truly could not have done this makeover or half of what I've accomplished in the kitchen without Lowe's.com. So if you're inspired by this, then be sure to show Lowe's some love too. Shop all your home needs using Lowe's new finds. Click the link in the video description. You'll notice on the edges of this tray ceiling design that I also have these hidden super flush mount can lights as well. I got those from Lowe's too, and they installed so easily and provide incredible lighting with full temperature control. I just love them. But the one question I have is, should I add an additional pendant above my sink? If you noticed, I had bought 3, intending to put one hanging down over my sink area between these 2 cabinets, but I just don't know if a semi-flush mount light fixture would look more fitting. So let me know in a comment below your thoughts about that, and thank you so much for watching this video. I'm really proud of myself for taking on this sleek and modern design with all these angles. It was a real stretch for my skill set, but I couldn't be prouder with how it turned out. Oh, and can you pick out the seams on the 10-foot sides? Yeah, me neither. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the woods. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you can see how my kitchen remodel turns out in the end.